What's up, guys? This is another video. If you haven't read the title, this is my personal review of Spider-Man No Way Home. I've seen it 2 times, 2 days in a row, and yeah, let's get into this shit. First, without the spoilers, I will say that this is probably one of the definitive Spider-Man movies, and it actually makes it to where all of the Spider-Man movies matter. And that's what I really like about this movie, in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of different, very many Easter eggs, very many references. It makes makes it worthwhile. I still think it's probably behind Spider-Man 2 and Into the Spider-Verse, but it's top 3. Hands down, one of the best Spider-Man movies ever made. I think all the actors did really well. Tom Holland really does carry himself really well. The villains, seeing a lot of them come back and have their stories told in this way makes it better. It like they just get their whole stories like bookended and almost like a redo of this for some of these characters, and like almost like a continuation of their stories from the previous movies. Well written, the scores is really great. Really, I think this movie can win some awards for the score, for sure, and for the visual effects. And we'll see. So it seems like Marvel wants to give it a shot with some awards. Yeah, but it was a really great movie. I would give this a 9 out of 10. Not perfect, but definitely good. I think the beginning is a little slow, but once it gets rolling, it just spirals and spirals and spirals, and then it's done, and you're like, okay, it's already over. But I think you should give this movie a watch, even if you're not a Spider-Man guy, or if you're not a Tom Holland Spider-Man guy. You should give this a watch. It's brilliant. It's probably the best Marvel movie of this year. Yeah, actually it is, and it makes me excited for what they can do going forward. Yeah, so I'm gonna go into some spoilers now. So click away if you don't want spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So in this movie, there's obviously the villains: Doctor Octopus, not Scorpion, Sandman, Electro, Lizard, and Goblin, and all these characters coming back from previous Tom Holland Spider-Man, from the Amazing Spider-Man, from Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. There's these villains coming in, being pulled into this Sinister Six of sorts, and it all has to do with Spider-Man's spell. He messes Doctor Strange's spell. You know that from the trailers. And Spider-Man. Most of this movie is about Spider-Man trying to get into college, and his friends are getting in trouble for it, and there's a lot of jokes with that and Flash Thompson and stuff like that. But anyway, they arrive. You first see Ock, and Octopus is like, "You're not my Peter Parker," and that leads to a whole lot of things. And the nanobites gets controlled. Then you see Goblin. When you see Goblin on screen, like even the Hello Peter gives you chills, but then once you see Goblin in the full shiny green, armored, and the laugh and the pumpkin bomb, and just seeing William Dafoe's Goblin when he first appears on the screen, it's perfect. I think it's one of the better moments. It's memorable seeing Goblin come back. It really is. And as the movie progresses, some of Doctor Strange just captures Lizard, and eventually Holland goes and captures Electro, and he doesn't want to capture Sandman. Sandman has been pretty helpful. He just wants to go home. He's like, "How can I help you?" And that was cool seeing, Spider-Man and Sandman team up again, in a way, at least at first. And then Doctor Strange snaps Sandman into a cage, and then Spider-Man offers to help them. And there's a little side story where Doctor Strange versus Spider-Man thing goes on. And one of my favorite things in that little situation was whenever he hits Peter Parker out of his body, and the spider sense is still not letting Strange do anything about it. So I mean, that's always really cool. A really big part at the beginning of the movie is that we get Daredevil, Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock, a different version of him is here, and someone throws a brick through the window, and he catches it. I popped off. That was the biggest pop in the movie for me, was seeing Charlie Cox's Daredevil. And if you haven't seen my Hawkeye review, Kingpin came back into that show. So we have Daredevil, we have Kingpin in the MCU, and I'm really excited to see where this is going to go, because that's a big thing. It's a big important thing. And going from there, I mean, we have so many other things happening. Eventually, we get to a point where Aunt May is killed by Green Goblin in a very similar fashion to Goblin being killed in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And in the scene, she should really not have been able to stand up, but she stands up and she's like, I'm fine, I'm just out of breath. And let's get out of here. And that's when she gets home, when she's like, I'm dead. But in this moment, this part of it is a really climatic moment, and it does give you feels. I didn't cry at this moment, but I know people who did. But she's, she gets the line, with great power comes great responsibility, and we finally get it in the MCU. We get the great power when it comes from Aunt May and not Uncle Ben. So that's interesting. I think Happy Hogan really doesn't have a point in this movie as well. Just a side thing. I think he's just there to play off a little bit. But we get that line, and eventually, he goes off. We switch to Ned and MJ, and they're like, we should kill these villains. And instead, I wish Peter was here, and they spark. Ned gets his magic, at least seems like. And they do it again, and the first person that comes through, Andrew Garfield. And the first time we watched it in theaters, nobody really popped, except for maybe me and Mark. But in the second time I saw it, people fucking popped. And I mean, they really popped for Andrew Garfield coming through that, and him explaining, like, get the cobweb, which was really funny. And they figure out, oh, you're not our Peter Parker, but you're a Peter Parker. And, okay, let's do it again until we find the real Peter. And that was a good joke. And they do it again, and then this time it's Tobey Maguire, and he seems to be, like, Andrew Garfield seems to know a little bit what's going on, but even Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, it seems like he knows what's going on. Like, he's like, I've been trying to find your Spider-Man for a while. I think he needs my help or whatever, and that's really cool. And we get this moment of, like, the Andrew Garfield and Spider and Tobey, like, shoot webs at each other. Such a cool moment, and it was just cool seeing them two, and we got way more of them two back than I was expecting. And it worked, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment, seeing them on screen again. And then we get to, like, they name these moments of, like, these places, like, that meant a lot to them. The Chrysler Building, the skyscraper, the Empire State Building. And they're like, does your Peter have it? And they go, oh, I think I know. And they go there. And we get this cool shot of both of them, like, up on the top of this building, whereas Peter looks like he looks threatened, but they're like, wait. And we have this real cool moment of them, like, no, we're sending you all back. Like, and they go through this explanation of, like, hey, I lost my Uncle Ben, I lost Gwen, which is his MJ, and he goes, but she told me, like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man says that with great power, and then Tobey finishes it with great responsibility, and they all kind of look at each other and nod. We go into this big moment, like big montage. But I need to, before I go that, I'm jumping around a lot, I'm sorry. But we got a few memes. We had the Green Goblin, I'm something of a scientist myself meme, which was a really good callback, and just classic meme. We also got the Spider-Man pointing meme, which was really funny, where Ned calls for Peter, and they all go, you mean him, me. I think that was cool. MJ saying, like, hey, it's cool seeing through yous, which is also pretty cool, seeing a Spider-Verse happening before our eyes. As well as Tobey and Andrew kind of having hearts to hearts, where First, I mean, Andrew does say he became vengeful, which is also making me really excited to see, because this movie sets up a lot of Andrew Garfield, like, more, like, we could get more Andrew Garfield, which could be cool. Tobey says, don't give up on finding somebody, you will find that somebody, and I thought that was great. And just, like, them building Andrew up, as well as Tobey building up both of them, and they all quipping about Tobey's organic webbing from his, and we were always wondered what a reaction to that would be, because we had the same idea. A few other things. The Rogers musical was shown in a couple shots in the background of the movie. We got the Department of Damage Control, which, if you don't know Damage Control, do yourself a favor. Damage Control is really fun to see, even though they seem like assholes in this movie. They are a section of the government. And when it comes down to the final fight, this is where it gets really interesting. After curing Doc Ock in the beginning, this is where their plan is to cure all of them, to save them from their deaths, because almost all of them die in their respective movies. At first, they don't work together. They're not doing well against these villains. These villains are kicking their ass. Eventually, like, hey, we need to work together. And eventually, they said, let's take one down at a time, and they do that. And we get to see this really great action sequence, see them all together on screen, and one by one they do cure the various villains. Eventually, we get to a point where in the trailer where they drop MJ, and Holland tries to get her, and he gets hit with a glider. And this is where Andrew's Spider-Man gets to redeem himself, and he dives and he saves her, and in the same fast fashion where he lands on his feet on the ground with her in his arms, and he's crying, and he's like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. Are you okay? And he's tearing up, and it's a great like come around, and like they're giving these people like a finish to their stories, and just like how Toby's is got a lot of time to think about a cure for Osborn and things like that, and eventually they get to the end where they cured all the villains. We get Electro and Andrew. They got to talk to each other, which was really sweet. We got to see Dr. Octopus and Toby's interaction with each other, and like he's like, "How you doing?" And Toby's like, "I've been trying to do better." And there's just a whole bunch of things that are kind of just falling into place, and this is why it connects the whole Spider-Verse. All the Spider-Man movies are connected to the MCU, and it makes me smile. Eventually, we get to the point where Spider-Man has to decide that everyone needs to forget him, and he does forget them. But in the fractures of the Doctor Strange get to use, you do see a few various Spider-Man villains. Classic Kraven with the spear, the classic Scorpion, a massive Rhino, like the comic Rhino, a version of Black Cat, one that looks like the Watcher, and a few others. Let me know if there's any I did not see in the comments. I would love to know if you saw any other characters, Easter eggs, things like that in the trailer. And I know there's a lot. I watch a guy named Emergency Awesome who catches a lot more than I do. But after this whole situation, he wins. You get these beautiful moments, like they want to see each other again. It seems like I hope we get to see these Spider-Men together one more time. In some kind of way in a Spider-Verse. I love this movie. Eventually we get to a point where it seems like he's taking a GED test, nobody remembers who he is, so he never went to school. And I do think they're setting up that Ned will become a bad guy, a Hobgoblin, even though Ned does say, I will never turn on you and try to kill you. I think we're going to lean towards Ned eventually becoming Hobgoblin. But I could be wrong. I think we're getting more Spider-Man. It seems like I'm down for another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man as well. Because the way they did it, he could be the ultimate Spider-Man now. And he could find his MJ. We can get that Face It Tiger line. In this movie, we have a version of that, Go Get Him Tiger. But I would love to see eventually a Face It Tiger. You could just hit the jackpot line eventually. But this ends in a way, very emotional. Steven saying, "You can call me Steven" at the end of the movie. Like, it's just, this movie is all around one of the best comic book movies out there, and it's one I'm going to rewatch many times probably. One of the ones I recommend people watching. Eventually, we get to the end, and we do get to see Tom Holland put on the classic red and blue suit, a handmade suit. This is back to street level Spider-Man, where he has no allies. It's just him. and we're getting into the college Spider-Man, which is going to be great. And it sets up a lot of things where this goes. But then you got the end credits scenes, and there's two, but there's only one you need to watch. And the reason I say that is because the second one is just the Doctor Strange trailer that they dropped online. And I was really disappointed in that because I was like, why would you do that? Why would you tack a trailer onto this as an end credit scene? The same thing. It's like when they did the Rogers musical thing. I was like, really? You have to make Rogers as an end credit scene? We need more important end credit scenes to establish more things, but whatever. The first end credit scene, however, is very useful, and you don't have to wait too long to watch it. And it establishes something very important. You get to see Eddie Brock, Venom in Mexico. He's learning all these things about this new world that he's in. He's like, oh, maybe I need to go to New York and meet the Spider-Man. But he doesn't get to. He gets blipped away just like the rest of the villains, which is very interesting that he gets blipped in because he didn't know Spider-Man before. I'm wondering if it's because the symbiote knew Spider-Man and not Eddie. In a way, because that's it. Because it should have been everybody who knows Spider-Man comes into the universe. So why is it that Eddie Venom came into the universe? That's a very big thing that I would love to know. Maybe the Venom symbiote knew a Spider-Man. Because that would make it very interesting as to why Eddie Brock managed to cross universes. Since, at least in the context of the movie, he should have, and he gets flipped away, so that means he also was in the boat of knowing who Spider-Man was before entering the universe. He knew of Peter Parker. But when he gets flipped away, he leaves something behind, and that is a piece of the Venom symbiote. So we're getting the black suit. We're getting the Venom symbiote Spider-Man in the MCU. That this symbiote is now going to attach itself to Peter. What does this mean? Does this mean that we're getting that story, like this universe and this universe, two Venoms existing? Or is it going to be something different? And I think it's also crazy because they've referenced like, hey, I fought an alien with black goo. Peter might remember that his other Spider-Man did that. But it's a very good end credit scene. But yeah, that was the movie, and that's some of the things that happen in it that I'm just really, and even if you watch this without watching the movie, go watch the movie, because the way I explain it is not anywhere near the level of how great it is and how good this trilogy has been. And this is how you end a trilogy. This is how you do a trilogy. Star Wars should learn from this trilogy how to end a trilogy and how to make it worth it. Because even if let's say you didn't like the other two Spider-Man, this movie is even better than the previous two Tom Holland Spider-Mans. And the fact that they upped themselves is very important, and it does show them that, like, yeah, you should look at Star Wars, and you need to learn how to make a trilogy, Disney, with Star Wars. Because if they could do it with Spider-Man, they could do it a few other characters. But Spider-Man being the one that has the best box of trilogy, unless you include the Avengers movies, which is more than a trilogy now. But standalone trilogy, if you just put the Spider-Man movies together, this is a great trilogy. And it also makes me proud for the future of Spider-Man and what Sony might do with Spider-Man. Because that can be a whole new avenue of doing Andrew again, making him an ultimate Spider-Man. Bringing Toby in, doing these Spider-Verse things where they come back every now and then. It would be cool too. But I think Andrew deserves another movie because they seem to really gravitate to him a lot. And he's setting up some things like, yeah, you find the love interest, but if they don't, that's okay too. But they do set up a lot of Spider-Verse things, and we're getting the Spider-Verse animated film, and it's just so many multiverse things with Spider-Verse, Multiverse Madness, No Way Home. This is and then DC, which is not really connected to any of this, I know, but even DC doing Flashpoint, there's so much multiverse things happening in every comic book franchise right now. It's fucking nuts. And I think that maybe the Spider-Verse and the Spider-Man No Way Home characters have some weaving in and out, and stuff like that, because there's so much Spider-Man, and I think the next few years, with all the things that are going on, Loki and you know, Eternals and all those things, and you know, Kang the Conqueror, and all these things are going to be very important for people to watch. And also, Netflix shows are doing great, even if they're not all 10 out of 10s. They're fun to watch, and they continue seeing this franchise and this story. None of them have been terrible. Some of them have been all right, but nothing's been terrible to me. I'm excited to see where this goes, especially with the Spider-Man universe, and if Sony's still going to do Silk, if they're going to do Black Cat movies, or they're going to do, you know, Venom, and I'm looking forward to Morbius in January. I think it comes out in January, so this makes me really excited, and I'm a Spider-Man boy. I grew up with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man as a child, and this is like a whole comeback, and just was very smiling in the theater with this thing happening, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. I could go on about this forever, and I think me and Mark will have to make a video about this movie, or a podcast topic about Spider-Man and where's this going and all that stuff, and the multiverse and the TV shows, and what do we want to see, because Daredevil, Kingpin, there's a lot we can talk about. I'm really, really excited, and I think you could tell. But let me know what you think. If you've seen Spider-Man, let me know what you think in the comments below. Anything, what your spoilers, what your thoughts on Kingpin and Daredevil making it into the universe, whether Toby and Andrew, the villains, your theories on where this is going to go with Sony universe and the MCU and all the universes in between, where you think all this stuff could culminate to, and what crazy things could they throw at us. They've thrown a lot of crazy shit at us this last year, with the Celestials, with Hawkeye, with Kingpin, and with this movie with Daredevil and Toby and Andrew, and the multiverse, and, you know, and Scarlet Witch becoming the actual Scarlet Witch, and the new Captain America, and Black Knight, and you know, Blade, and all that stuff. Like, we're getting close to some crazy shit, and a lot of shows coming out soon, man, a lot. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the videos, thumbs it up. If you don't like it, thumbs down. Even if there's no thumbs down thing in there, just thumbs it down in a comment. Be like, a thumbs down. Fuck it, if you don't care. If you don't give a fuck, flip me off down in the comments below. I love seeing everybody's reactions to films and movies and games and everything, so I love talking about that. So let me know. If you disagree with my 9 out of 10, tell me why. If you think it's a 10 out of 10, tell me why. I think it's one of the best comic book movies, so I'll see you in another one. Stay Spidey.